who's the most to blame for that collapse last night?
Oh, easily Dan Quinn. Easily. The defense was so alarmingly inept, so lost, so discombobulated, so out of sync, and ultimately so punked. There's no more flagrant culprit for yesterday's demise than Dan Quinn. I think it's so bad that I don't think that Dan Quinn deserves to be a head coach. I think that he should be immediately omitted from head coaching consideration for the Seattle Seahawks. And I know that he was an exceptional defensive coordinator in Seattle. And he's been a damn good coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. But when you're that head coach, you got to remember, he was the head coach in Atlanta when you had a 28-3 lead against the New England Patriots, and you ended up losing that game. We point to Kyle Shanahan because you kept throwing the football instead of running the football and should have milked the clock more. But there was an authoritative figure that he had available there, which was Dan Quinn. Where the hell were you? Were you sleepwalking? And by the way, you didn't stop New England from coming back in that game. Dan Quinn, I'm not trying to sit up there and say, and this is where it gets tricky, Dan Orlovsky, Shannon. I am not saying that Dan Orlovsky doesn't deserve a job in the NFL as a defensive coordinator any more than I'm saying Mike McCarthy doesn't deserve to be a head coach.
Dan Quinn.
But what I'm saying is in Dallas, when you have a Harbaugh or you have a Belichick available, then excuse me, if Belichick came, he ain't going to keep Dan Quinn as a defensive coordinator. If Harbaugh came, likelihood he ain't going to keep Dan Quinn as his defensive coordinator, rather. If I'm them, I'm moving on from that. And that's what I'm saying to Dallas Cowboys. I think McCarthy should be gone. I think Quinn should be gone. But I definitely think that yesterday, based on how porous Dallas's defense was and how they got straight up punked, there's no way around it. I believe that ultimately Dan Quinn was the culprit because they were just lost throughout the afternoon.
Yeah, Stephen, there's enough blame to go around because I don't think Mike McCarthy had that offense ready to play either. But I'm going to have to side with you with Dan Quinn in this defense because all year they've been predicated on turning you over, creating short fields, creating havoc in the backfield, pressuring your quarterback, and they did none of that yesterday. A defense that was the middle of the pack all year against the run, now all of a sudden you let Aaron Jones and that Packer offense run wild against your 3 rush touchdowns, and Aaron Jones looked like a Pro Bowl, all-pro running back. He had an outstanding day, but they came in with a commitment. See, running the football is all about attitude. You start with the line, you start with your 5 offensive linemen, they got to be violent. And then you get to your wide receivers, and they got to be willing to stick their nose in there and dig out support. And they did a great job of that, blocking down the field in order to spring Aaron Jones, and you see not tackle until he's 7-8 yards down the field. But I'm a firm believer in this. And you've heard me say this before, Dio and Stephen A. It doesn't matter what you are in the regular season. Can you get done what you need to get done when you absolutely have to have it? And yesterday, neither side of the football, when they needed to stop on third down, the Cowboys defense couldn't get off the field. When they needed a third down conversion on offense, the Cowboys offense couldn't stay on the field. So there's enough blame. Now, you said something very interesting, Stephen A. Go back with me. You said it was Kyle Shanahan when they had the 28-3 lead and they wouldn't run the football, but Dan Quinn was an authoritative figure. Who was the authoritative figure yesterday that when Dan Quinn kept calling that defense and blitzing, who was the authoritative figure on the field? Take off, Dio.
Supposed to be McCarthy.
I mean, they were down 48-16. There is no singular blame or most blame. Everybody, Shannon, you said it, like everybody has their hand in this. There was nothing about that defense that was prepared. And Stephen A. and Shannon, that's why I made it a point to bring up Aaron Glenn's name for the Detroit Lions last night. The reason why is this. That Rams offense that Detroit had to go against is brutal to prepare for. They do so much shifts and motions and create matchups.
That's all they were doing.
Aaron Glenn countered in the second half so incredibly well. I've had people say, well, like every defense struggles with the stuff that the Packers do. Well, apparently the Lions had some answers because it won them a ball game. And so the lack of adjustment by Dallas defensively, the lack of the person who played with the most, or at least represented the Cowboys with the most emotion was Jimmy Johnson at halftime during the studio show.
True.
So, like, defensively, they're to blame.
That is
Offensively,
hilarious,
they
Dan.
were awful.
They're terrible.
They were predictable. And here's my thing. Everyone's killing the defense, rightfully so. The offense gave Green Bay 13 points, one with the pick six, one with the interception at the 15 or 20-yard line. Last year, when it mattered the most, the offense did not play well. And 2 years ago, when it mattered the most, the offense did not play well. So, everybody that is a primary figure on both sides of the football, offensive or defensive, has to have blame in this and has to take some accountability for this. It wasn't just the defense was bad, and it wasn't just Dak was bad. The play calling was predictable. Right. Dak Prescott played poor. He was timid. He didn't see the field well. He had no trust in his eyes, and he played way too fast. And the defense was awful.
Was Saturday night more about the Dolphins or the Chiefs to you?
This is about the Dolphins. I mean, look, and this is no slight to the Chiefs. I think their defense has been unbelievable all year long, and probably if they're going to get to and ultimately win the Super Bowl, they're probably going to do it on the back of that defense. But this is about the Miami Dolphins and their inability to beat good teams all year. They've beaten one good team all year, and then you exacerbate a situation with adverse conditions. So either it's adverse weather or good teams, it seems like the Dolphins find ways to lose. And so I was not surprised. And Dio, you probably played games like this. It's a mental grind to convince your mind to tell your body that it's not cold out here. And I got to go function, and I got to go make these plays because it's cold. And people are like, well, is it cold? Yeah, it's cold. It's cold. I don't let anybody tell you, I don't care how much adrenaline you got going. I don't care what's at stake. It's cold. I'm telling you, I haven't played in anything that cold, but I've been pretty close to zero, and it's cold. And to convince yourself that it's not cold and go out there and react as if it's 80 degrees is a grind. Miami's not used to that. You can pretty much practice against, you get a guy that's elusive and you have your best athlete play that position. Or if it's raining, you can wet the footballs. How do you simulate minus degrees in Miami when it's 7 degrees? Where can you go get an ideal situation like that? This was about Miami. We knew they're not built for these kind of conditions. They're not built to grind it out. They couldn't run the football, and so now you leave Tua and you ask Tua to win you a football game when you can't run it. 1 for 12 on third down, and they didn't see one red zone possession. This was all about Miami, and this is no disrespect because the Chiefs played really, really well. But the Miami Dolphins, this was all about their inability to do anything.
I totally disagree. I thought it was about Kansas City. In one, it was the best game they played in maybe all season from top to bottom. Two, it looked like a team, or they looked like a team that could get back to the Super Bowl. I did not expect Miami to win the game. Miami going on the road, given the weather elements, and then also giving the injuries that they were dealing with. This team has been decimated with injuries. I didn't expect them to win. And I expected Kansas City to play well. They played better than I thought. I think a couple things stand out. Number one, it was their cleanest game in a while, both in penalties and self-inflicted wounds and turnovers. Number two, one of the things that's been missing in this offense was explosive plays. They had 11 explosive plays, 20-plus yards. Miami had 3. That was the opposite this season. Kansas City couldn't get any, and Miami had a ton. They flipped it in that game. If the Kansas City Chiefs can get more of that over, obviously, next week, potentially on the road in Buffalo, that's going to be a massive part. They look like a team that could win the Super Bowl. The second thing is this, or at least get back to it. The second thing is this. It's the complete contrast of our previous conversation. Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator for Kansas City, continues to show that he is one of the best big-game defensive coordinators in all of football. That Kansas City Chiefs team that I saw play Saturday night, and I saw some of those, Rashee Rice, continue to be the focal point of their pass game, and Pacheco and the interior of their offensive line. That's a team that I saw, okay, if they got to go on the road versus Buffalo, they could win. Okay, if Houston's going to come to them, they could beat Houston. If they can catch Baltimore. So that was way more of the bigger deal for me Saturday night.
I'm going to roll with Shannon here, but I'm going to be the non-football guy here when I use this analogy. So you ever walk around, you walk down the street, and, you might have tree branches and stuff like that hanging low and stuff like that. It might graze your skin or whatever, right? Might a little scratch or whatever, hurts a little bit. You ever have that happen to you in freezing temperature? it looked like your damn. I remember years ago when the tree branch scratched my ear. I felt like my damn ear was cut off because that's how cold it was. Okay, right? This is how painful it is. Right? Cold weather matters, and it's not an accident. I said this when the minute, if you remember last week, fellas, they announced that it was going to be -4 degree temperature. Wind chill factor that makes it feel like -25 to -27 degrees. I said game over. There's no need to discuss this game. Miami don't stand a chance, okay? And what happens? We come to find out that they are now 0-11 in games of 40-degree temperature or less, getting outscored by 17 points per game. That's what we've learned about the Miami Dolphins. And I told y'all last week, I was sick of them. I'm done with them. The minute they wet the bed and they got their butts kicked and let Baltimore drop 56 on them, I was done with them. Why? Because you see, when you reside near South Beach, in that weather, okay, one would think you would exhaust yourself prioritizing anything that I need to ensure that I don't have to go on the road to the playoffs. Why? Because when I scour the AFC, there's Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City. There's Baltimore, some freezing temperatures up there right now. There's Buffalo. The game had to be delayed a day because of the weather in Buffalo. Okay, I'm scouring the rest of the conference, and I'm going like this. There's very, very few places that feel like South Beach. Let me make sure I don't have to go there. They did no such thing from the start of this season throughout the rest of the season. Whenever they went on the road, especially against quality teams, they got what they deserved. We all knew it was going to happen just based on the meteorologist and the weather report that was coming. We didn't even need to go to football. We knew it the second we knew it was going to be freezing temperatures.
Stephen A., they had a 3-game lead with 5 games to play. And you get the final game at home against Buffalo. And then guess what? You get to play this game in 70-degree weather. It might not have been against Kansas City, but you get to play it in 70-degree weather. Well, it's your own fault. But we've been saying this. We saw this all year, D.O., with the Miami Dolphins. Against good teams, what happens other than the Cowboys? The way they're built, a speed team, when you put speed teams in inclement weather, it could be rain, it could be cold, it can be snow. They're at a decided disadvantage.